All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Coffee and CEU event for May 2021 from the DBA SIG. We have a pretty awesome presentation coming up today, so I hope you guys are as excited as I am. So as usual, let me go through the housekeeping items. So this event is being recorded, and it's going to be uploaded into our DBA page after the event. If you are here for CEUs, there's going to be a Google form that I will send out right after my spiel, and that's where you're going to sign in. The sign in will be sent out, right after I finish this, and you're going to complete the sign in within 5 minutes, okay, to be eligible for your CEUs. So please keep an eye out for that. And the same process is going to happen at the end. So a sign out form is going to be sent out at the end of the presentation. All you have to do is make sure to sign out within 5 minutes of the presentation ending. And today's event is going to count for one BACB Type 2 Learning CE. And we're still going to be monitoring attendance throughout the presentation. So if you have any, major connection issues and you get logged out for a long period of time, just shoot us an email, let us know. And so since we are monitoring the attendance, if you want to just make sure your full name is displayed on Zoom and matches your sign in and out name. And so today we're just going to be doing a little bit differently for this presentation for the cameras on and off. So we're going to have everyone keep their mics and cameras off. However, the chat box is going to always be open. We're just trying to try something new to limit the distractions for our presenter and our audience. So if you have any questions, send them in the chat. I'm going to jot them down, and Adrian is going to love to answer any and all questions you have at the end of the presentation. And now, finally, I get to do the fun part of introducing someone I am sure you have all heard of, the famous Adrian Bradley. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to Adrian, and I'm going to also turn off my camera in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. I don't know about famous, but I'm just a regular girl from Michigan. Hi everyone, and welcome to ACT, a parent-based approach and really utilizing our values. I like to start off all my presentations on who I am and what my why is, and not what I do, because I am a big proponent as people's really stating their why before what they do, and really getting that connection with me during my presentations. And as I am talking, I know there's going to be something that you guys have to fill out within the first 5 minutes that they are going to put that in the chat. But if you could also put in the chat, if you are kind of a beginner with ACT, if you kind of intermediate skill set with ACT, or if you're really like, I know ACT and I'm coming here to think about all the complex things, put that in the chat so I can gauge the audience a little bit. And then if you can also put, what is your why for being here today in relation to parent training? Are you wanting to know how to work with more difficult parents, parents with complex needs, things like that? So if you can put that in the chat, those 2 things in the chat, that would be great. And I'm gonna read them off here in a little bit. But who I am and what is my why. My name is Adrian Bradley. I am a BCBA from Detroit, Michigan. I love to travel. I love everything nature and water. I am a hiker. I like kayaking. I'm the one that will see a hole in the forest and be like, oh, let's go down there, and not worry about snakes or anything like that. I am also a information junkie. I love all random information, history, love just learning about things. I'm not a trivia buff. I haven't really memorized the facts yet, but I do love to watch all those documentaries on Netflix and Hulu. Toni Morrison is the person that I look up with. During this time, I have really been changing, and Toni Morrison has definitely been a guide to figuring out my Blackness and who I am. So I really look up to her. And of course, Grey's Anatomy is my very favorite show. I've probably watched each episode about 60 times, and my partner hates it. But what do I do? And then we're going to get started with the presentation. I am a clinical director at Behavior Frontiers for our Michigan, Detroit, and Novi regions. I am also an adjunct professor at the local university here at Wayne State University. In their ABA program. I am one of the co-hosts of the Shades of ABA podcast, and we talk everything diversity, equity, and inclusion within ABA, and have different guests on the show and different topics. It's really fun. We do not regularly post. We post when we feel like it, so it's not an every 2-week thing, but you'll definitely get a podcast or two a month. And then I am the president of Black Applied Behavior Analysts, BABA for short. And we look to uplift and empower and educate Black and Brown individuals within the ABA field. And you do not have to be Black to join. We accept everybody, and we have a conference coming up if anyone is coming, and we're super excited. But let me look in the chat here for a second and see, are you guys beginners with ACT? And why are we here? Let's see, newbie to ACT, beginner, intermediate, between as well. Very first CEU on ACT, nice, okay. Intermediate-ish, and what is our why? ACT is new. I have some very difficult parents that are going through a lot and would love to provide them more support. Really nice, Bailey. You're definitely going to touch on that. And I think in the past year has been particularly difficult for parents. And we need to bump up whatever level of support we are providing. Hi, Valerie, as well. Nice to see you today. And yes, COVID. COVID has caused so much stress for our parents. And within the ABA field, we have had to be so adaptable and flexible during this time. And one of the biggest areas is parents. There's a nice article that just came out about parenting during COVID and homeschooling and having their children in ABA and what that did to parent stress levels. I am not a parent, so I will preface that. And so my why was that I was finding myself as a BCBA. I felt like I wasn't being an effective parent trainer. And if anyone who knows me, when I feel like I'm not good at something, I dive straight into the research, and then I do presentations, and I try to be a train the trainer type of model within these presentations. But we are taught that parent training is effective, and it is, right? We know that it improves parent confidence, it improves family mental health, it improves parent quality of life, improves generalization from everyday lives, and many more benefits. And these are just some articles that kind of outline those things. That's within the decade of 2012 and 2017. We know that using behavioral skills training is also effective with parents. And so if we know that it's effective, right, and we know that we were able to do these things and have these strategies to use, a lot of people still feel as if they are being ineffective. And so just with my personal journey, I was taught to go straight into action. You see a problem, okay, what's your solution? Okay, teach them that solution. I was not taught to look at parents as a whole unit and look at the client, including the families. I was also finding that I, as a practitioner, had unrealistic expectations for my parents. With me not being a parent, I don't know what it looks like when you have to go home with two twins that are on the spectrum, and then your BCBA assigns you homework to do some rubric, and you're in a doctoral program and things like that. So I was not able to take myself out of my own situation, and with me not being a parent, I felt like that was a barrier for me. I also noticed that parents would come to parent training, but I was getting a lot of treatment, not good treatment adherence. And actually, behavioral health has one of the lowest treatment adherence within the medical field. And what I mean by treatment adherence, I mean compliance in a way. I don't really like that word, but how much do they follow through with our instructions, with our training, and being able to apply that. Behavioral health in the research has one of the lowest treatment adherence from parents. And then I also was having just kind of biased thoughts towards parents. I kind of want us to be honest here and put in the chat, you know, have you had any negative thoughts or biased thoughts towards some of your clients' parents? And if you feel as if they're being difficult or anything like that, or you're not able to really understand they want this, but not willing to do this. And I just kind of wanted to reframe those thoughts. And so what really kind of pushed me to look more into ACT and what it looks like with parent training and to improve our parent training was I was seeing things like this. How do you effectively supervise and implement behavior change programs when a particular culture defies every ABA principle? Oh, and they don't discipline males, and basically you are abusing them if they cry and you don't give them what they want in return. This was a Facebook post from this year. I see posts like this pretty often, just on social media. And so I really feel as if ACT can help reframe these mindsets and to look at parents and provide the tools to look at it, really anything in a different light, So what is currently wrong with the parent training approach? We lack compassionate care. Technical skills for parent is not necessarily enough. In the research, it finds that parents that have more of a rapport and a personal connection and have that, I know you have my best interest at heart, and with that compassionate care, they're more likely to have better treatment adherence. And you really get that a lot in the counseling field and the medical field research and with compassionate care. But there's also an article, the compassionate care article with Bridget Taylor and Linda LeBlanc and Melissa Nosek as well, that kind of talks about this and how as behavior analysts, we can improve in compassionate care when it comes to our families. The research also shows that ABA can contribute to an added stressor. As much as we feel as if ABA is the solution and this is what we're looking to improve and things like that, having ABA in the home can be very intrusive, or having an additional service that mom or dad or the aunt or the grandma have to drop off while also go picking up other kids can be an added stressor. And then on top of, we are all about parent generalization. So we want to make parents the best BCBAs that they can be without spending the thousands of dollars that we had. And if you had a scholarship out there, I really envy you with that. We then look at practitioner experience. About 55% of our field has been certified within the last 5 years. So we are a very young aged field and young experienced field. I think I was reading something that said maybe in 5 years, about 60 to 70% of our field are going to be certified within the last 5 years. And with that, especially with parent training, we're not getting a lot of experience there because we're so new. And then of course, we talked about the treatment adherence and concordance with medical-based treatment and behavioral therapy. So before we dive into ACT, I do want to just pay homage to history and similarities. ACT has a very overlapping characteristics with Buddhism. And actually Stephen Hayes spoke about this in his article, Buddhism and Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. There's a lot of connection with Buddhism. So I just want to pay homage to those who may practice Buddhism, and also to make people aware that ACT does have a lot of similarities with Buddhism, with the values and acceptance and mindfulness and things like that. And that is one of the big conversations currently happening in the ACT world, is the connection to Buddhism and making sure that we're paying homage. So this is for our beginner ACT people. And I love when I have beginners here. This quote came out of the ACT book by Stephen Hayes. And I think it really speaks to why ACT is an important strategy and tool for us to be learning as behavior analysts. So we readily understand when practitioners are sometimes impatient with philosophy and theory. You usually want to move on immediately to practical details of how to help others. You seek to discover new and specific techniques to use, and we understand your priorities as functionally practical, given your limited time for technical reading. But there is an important clinical reason to explore the basic foundations of ACT, and namely that ACT asks its clients to take a new perspective on their personal learning. So ACT is not asking you to, all right, we're going to be so technical and, we're going to be looking at this from a super duper philosophical lens. One of the things that I love about ACT is, for me, is it brings the compassion back into ABA, in which that it teaches its stewards really how to use this strategy. ACT is a journey. It is not going to be something that 1 + 1 = 2, and we're going to be doing the same things. And so we're going to be going over some activities with that today, but know that when you get to learn ACT, it's really a journey that you're going to take. And one of the ways that I really learned best to utilize ACT was really utilizing ACT on myself. And then I was able to apply in other areas of focus. So what is ACT? Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. The Association for Contextual Behavioral Science has a really nice, quick summary of what ACT is, ACBS. A unique, empirically based psychological intervention that uses acceptance and mindfulness strategies together with commitment and behavior changes strategies to increase psychological flexibility. So in simple terms, ACT is a strategy that we can use to go from psychological inflexibility to psychological flexibility. And everything in between this arrow of how we get there are these ACT-based strategies, okay? And the 6 principles of ACT. Got any burning questions in the chat when we go on, let me know. And so what does the research say? This is a really nice article by Blackage and Stephen Hayes from 2006. Using acceptance and commitment training in the support of parents, children diagnosed with autism. This one was really cool. What this research study showed was that they had a pre and post kind of stress levels test. They took 20 parents and guardians, and they broke them up into 2 different groups. In one group, they had 2 days worth of a 2 days, 7 hours each day of an ACT workshop. So just 2 days of an ACT-based, values-based workshop. And then the other group of 10 parents had the BST and kind of the more traditional way that we are taught to approach parent training. And then they did a post-test, and they compared the stress levels of the parents of the group that did just your basic BST and kind of education, and then the group that did the 2-day ACT-based workshop. And what they found was that the group that did the ACT-based workshop had lesser stress levels than the group that did the BST and more of your traditional workshop. So ACT has been shown to reduce stress levels in parents and to make them feel even more confident with the parent training and the kind of everything that they have going on. Another research article by Evelyn Gold, Jonathan Tarbox, and Lisa Coyne, evaluating the effects of acceptance and commitment therapy on overt behavior with parents with autism. So this was the first study that really looked at the overt behaviors that parents engage in that we're able to measure, and utilized ACT and a value-based approach. And what they found was that the value-based approach reduce psychological distress over behaviors, and increase value-directed behaviors. And today we're going to be talking about all about our values and how do we do this value-based approach when it comes to parents. Okay, so this is the psychological flexibility hexaflex that you're always going to really see when it comes to ACT-based therapy. And there are 6 principles of today we're really going to focus on values, but I am going to go through really quickly just a summary of the other 5 principles and how they connect. Okay. So first we have being present and self as context. So ACT promotes ongoing non-judgmental contact with psychological and environmental events as they occur. This is really being present. This is where mindfulness comes in. So what you're going to see is that in the gray, this is kind of like our technical definition, and in the white is kind of my layman's terms definition. And so what does being present mean? Mindfulness. Making sure that you are present in the current moment and not thinking of events that are happening in the past and events that are happening in the future, right? So being present in the moment on this CEU. Are you thinking about, okay, I got to go to Home Depot today, I need to go to the market? Or are we thinking, okay, she's talking pretty good, she's explaining this pretty well, which she would slow down a little bit, but being present here in our presentation today. Self as context. So this really just kind of means observing oneself and being able to reflect on what is currently happening to you. So being able to kind of take yourself out, look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what's currently going on for me right now? Next, we have diffusion and acceptance. With diffusion, being able to recognize that our thoughts are just our thoughts and that's it, and not really making those into actionable behaviors, whether in the positive way or the negative way, well, really in the negative way. Taking thoughts too literally. We're not taking thoughts too literally, right? And we recognize this is just a thought and there is an action that I can do to get myself out of this thought. Acceptance, that you are able to be open and make room to experience the unpleasant thoughts and emotions of events of the human experience. So being able to accept what is currently happening, not being able to live in la-la land a little bit, but really kind of be present to those thoughts or those actions that's happening. And lastly, we have committed action and values. And we're going to be talking all about values today in these last 30 minutes that we have together. So committed action, ACT encourages the development of larger and larger patterns of effective action linked to chosen values. So what does that mean? Taking action on your values, making sure that we're really aligning with our values and that we're engaging in behaviors that are committed to our values. And what do I mean by values, right? Values is identifying what is most important to you. Okay, values are chosen qualities of pervasive actions that can never be obtained as an object, but can be instigated moment by moment. Okay, so ACT is really looking at what is most important to you and really looking at the values, but being able to identify the difference between goals versus values. And what does that really look like? And I love this metaphor. This metaphor is a widely used metaphor out in the ACT world. So this is not something that I have made up or anything like that. So I do just want to preface that. But I love it because it really helps to identify the difference between goals versus values. And I really like to think of that as your short term versus your long term, okay? So follow me here for a second. You're going on a road trip. You have 2 kids, right? You have kid B is named Bobby and kid A is named Johnny. Okay, so we have Bobby and Johnny in the car and you guys are going to Disneyland. Yay, Disneyland road trip. Except Disneyland is an 8-hour drive. Bobby likes and has a value of spending time with families, right? And so he's looking at the trees. He's really enjoying this 8-hour drive. He's enjoying the games that we're playing. He's asking all the questions. He's really taking in this whole experience because he values quality time with family. And let's take Johnny, for example. Johnny's goal is to just get to Disneyland, right? I'm so excited for Disneyland. I'm so excited for Disneyland. However, Johnny is the one that's going to be in the car being like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I'm so hungry. Are we there yet? Every 5 minutes, right? It's like you just asked that 20 minutes ago, and I said we were still 7 hours and 30 minutes away. So shout out to our parents that do road trips. I'm not sure if that will be me, but Johnny is living in a state of short-term goals, right? He likes spending time with his mom and dad and his other brother, but his goal is to get to Disneyland, right? But Bobby values family time. He understands and he's excited, just as excited as Johnny to go to Disneyland, but he's acting in a values-based approach, a long-term approach and experience, and not necessarily in a short-term goal experience. So when we talk about values and engaging in action that matches our values, you're taking everything in. You're understanding that it's going to be a journey to get there, right? But within this experience and within that 8 hours, you're going to really make sure that your actions and the overt and covert thoughts or statements you are saying are aligned with your values. So let's do some values-based activities, okay? And this is the 3 wishes exercise. So when I am doing ACT and really looking at this for parent training, as for example, I don't go in and I think someone, I don't go in and immediately say, we're gonna do ACT, and I'm going to teach you all about ACT, right? I'm going to go in and I'm going to have a conversation, and I don't introduce ACT right in the beginning. I start doing some exercises and I start identifying some of their complex needs and kind of their stressors. And then I say, okay, the last 3 weeks, we've been really utilizing this strategy and I think it's working great for you. And then I introduce them to ACT and what does that mean and what is it and all of that. I think ACT does a really good job at having parent-friendly verbiage. And that is something that as behavior analysts, we can sometimes get criticized about. So I do the 3 wishes exercise, and this is from Evelyn Gold. In one of her trainings, I think I might have learned about it in a boot camp training that I did with her. She does a lot of boot camps on different ACT-based approaches, whether that's parent training, self-care, things like that. So if someone's interested, I'm really looking into Evelyn Gold is nice. So I asked them, what are the 3 wishes for your child? What are the 3 wishes for yourself? And what are 3 wishes for your family? So I'm not just focused on the child. And I think that is one thing that ACT does a really good job about, is that it causes the practitioner to look at the family as a unit and not as, oh, here's the client and I'm only focused on the client. It really helps to look at it from a unit-based approach. And so when you're listening and you're having the conversation of what these 3 wishes are, you're going to be able to kind of pull out, okay, I'm hearing this, and I'm hearing this. So let's do a little bit, I wish I could do a role play, but I'll do a mock conversation. And what does this look like? So your family might say, my 3 wishes for my child is that I want them to be independent. I want them to be able to get dressed in the morning, and I want them to be able to socialize with other kids, right? So we remember those 3 wishes. We had independency, we had socialization, and we had something under the adaptive skills section, daily living. And then you say, what are the 3 wishes for yourself? And sometimes when you're asking these questions, parents have not thought about it in this way. I think there's some of you might be on the call today that are like, oh, wow, I never really thought to ask it in that way or really think about what are the 3 wishes for myself or for my family. Parents are focused on their child majority of the time. Parents sometimes forget about themselves because there's just a lot of things going on, and the parent might have 3 kids, or they work overnight shifts, and so they're not really able to think about this in light for themselves. But asking, what are 3 wishes for yourself, right? And let's say you want to increase self-care because we all want to take that nice little bubble bath with the wine or, the cognac on the ledge there, right? Let's say I want for myself to finish my degree. And let's say I want for myself to maybe enjoy spending time with your kids. And so when you're kind of thinking about, and they're going through, and you're having this conversation of the 3 wishes, you're going to be able to identify, okay, I hear that you value autonomy for your child. I hear that you value self-care for yourself. And I hear that you value spending quality family time together, right? And so from there, you're able to write down just those 3 quick values. You have autonomy for your child, you have family time for the unit, and you have self-care for yourself. And as you guys are going through your parent training, you want to always remember to bring them back to their values. And I think that's where BST can kind of, or other traditional ways that we're doing parent training can miss it. Because as the time goes on, and as we're on the day-to-day, and we have weekly to bi-weekly parent meetings, we can get stuck in a routine. And within that routine, we can get kind of stagnant. And so ACT allows for that stagnancy to not really occur because you're going to bring them back to their values, okay? There are many value-based activities that are out there. This is not the only one. I've seen kind of like a priority-based activity where you say what's least important, most important, and you try to like categorize them and pull them out that way. And it's a great conversational starter for you to get to know the families and to get to know them as a unit as well. Okay, so let's say we're just having a conversation and you have a family that's venting, right? And so this was a conversation that I actually had with one of my families, and they were upset about their hours. So I will read this to you. I'm upset that we are canceling. I want all of the hours that we are authorized. Brianna was told that she needed 30 hours a week of therapy. We have consistently been getting 20 to 25 hours per week. I also know we are working on toileting, but there's a lot of discussion time surrounding around toileting, and that is therapy hours that is being taken away from Brianna. You need to do better with staff and ensuring we are receiving hours we are authorized and need. Brianna could be progressing more, and staff need to understand they have a job and not to cancel. So just in the chat, who can identify what is this parent's values based off of this conversation? Independent hygiene, toileting, yes, that's definitely a value. Are there any other values that people are able to pull out from this conversation? What is it? And let me reframe that sentence. What do you think is most important to this parent as a value? And we'll take that and name that as a value. Consistency, dedication by staff, Consistency, yes. Consistency. They value consistency. What is most important to them? They value consistency, but then they also value independence, right? And in this situation, that kind of showed that there are two conflicting values going on in this conversation, right? In one breath, you want consistency of staff, you want out all of the hours, and you want your kid to be toilet trained. But we know with toilet training, that means a lot of discussion with the technicians on the case and filling out those different nuances and making sure we got the right schedule going, right reinforcer going. You know, toileting can be very daunting. And half of toileting is conversational or really trying to look at the data, right? So in one breath, I can't toilet train without being able to talk to my technician about what's kind of been going on that day or yesterday or so on and so forth. So in one breath, you value consistency and you want all the hours and you don't want us talking so much when we're out there in supervision, but in another breath, you want your child toilet trained. And so before ACT, I would have said, okay, well, we won't be able to toilet train because you don't want us to have long conversations and I can't really make database decisions. And that's the approach that I don't think we should be taking. And so with ACT, it goes something like this. You know, I hear that you value Brianna's independency and you value ABA, right? We want parents to value ABA, and I appreciate that you want consistency of hours. Let me give you the plan and let me kind of outline for you what did the hours look like and kind of what's going on with the cancellations and what is our plan moving forward, because I want to make sure you know that we also value consistency and independency within our program. And so that conversation and taking a more ACT-based, value-based approach versus, okay, well, I can't toilet train if I can't talk to my staff are two completely different things, right? And will bring out different stress identifiers for parents than others. And so when you're really looking at going back to the 3 wishes activity and making sure that we're writing down, you know, what their values are and remembering that when we're going through our committed action and bringing them back to is really important. And so this is a matrix. This is the ACT matrix, and this was one that I kind of created myself with this verbiage. And so there's different versions of this out there. But here in this circle are our values, right? So let's use the self-care, autonomy, and family time. And they have these values here. When you're utilizing the ACT matrix, we want to make sure that we're kind of getting hip to what is moving us away from our values. What do I tend to do when this inner stuff shows up? What is moving me away from consistently valuing self-care? What is moving me away from valuing autonomy or valuing spending time with my family, but also valuing self-care? And so this matrix can be a good organizer tool for people to use to identify what is moving you away, what hurts, what are the thoughts that come up for you, and why do they come up for you? So earlier we talked about some of the social media posts and some of the thoughts and the biases that behavior analysts can sometimes have with parents, and really looking at what is the inner stuff that shows up that gets in the way of who and what is important to me, i.e., what is moving me away from my values and what thoughts are occurring that's moving me away from my values. And then we want to make sure that we're moving towards our values. And so what behaviors can I engage in that moves me towards my values? And what matters? Who and what is important to me? And so really sitting down with families that maybe want their kid to be toilet trained, but you're not really getting a lot of treatment adherence from them. It's been a difficult year. We have been able to pivot in school, back out of school, in school, out of school for a week, out of school for a couple days. It's been crazy. And so that adds an additional stressor on top of, we know parents with children on the spectrum, and the research shows us that they are more stressed in general. And so really utilizing this to kind of organize you, what's moving you towards your values and what's moving you away from your values. And when you have those conflicting values, such as I value time with myself, but I also value time with my family, and I can't do both, how do we come to a middle ground? And I also think that with the ACT matrix, it's a really good way for parents to really understand ACT itself. Once you are introducing this to them and looking at values, committed action, and any other of the principles, I think the matrix does a nice job to keep that there. And we're going to get to questions in just a second. This is another just nice activity that I like to do, values-based activity that I like to do with parents, the bullseye activity. And so when you break up values, typically people are going to have values in these 4 categories. So we have relationships, we have leisure, personal health and growth, and work and education. So you're typically going to have values in these different categories, okay? And so when you're talking about what behaviors are parents engaging in that is moving them away from their values, and so on the outer ledge, you're gonna write those down here. And then you're going to have a conversation of what actions or committed actions and behaviors are you engaging in that's moving you more towards closer to your values. So this is just really a different matrix, but it also just helps to be a lot more parent friendly, and a lot of parents really kind of understand this just a little bit better. Excuse me. So when you're looking at, okay, what are the behaviors that we can engage in that's moving us back towards our values and not causing some of those stress, it really helps to have a nice visual. And so not only with the matrix along with the bullseye, you're able to really kind of utilize this a lot more effectively, and they're able to visualize where they're at. And so when you're having these conversations with families and you're really doing a more values-based approach, and once you've identified their values and things like that, you're able to sit down and come up with a behavior plan for them almost. And that's where that committed action principle comes into play, and really looking at, okay, what are the overt behaviors, just like in the Evil and Gold article with Jonathan Tarbox and Lisa Coyne, what were the overt behaviors that I was engaging in that moved me away from my values, and what is the overt behavior that I can engage in that moves me towards my values, and really utilizing and really working through all the in-between stuff that happens in this gray area, right? And getting them over those additional stressors and really working with them to find the additional resources, or remembering their values themselves. And really, like I said in the beginning, I had to use this on myself. I was going through periods of time with anxiety and this pandemic, and utilizing ACT and a values-based approach on myself really helps me to be able to utilize this and connect better with families that are also going through some of those stressors. One of the really nice things is, like I said, utilizing it on yourself, but a nice quote by Dr. Nasiya Srincion Ulazi, who is my mentor and does a lot with ACT as well. When a plant dies, you don't go straight to the leaves. You look at the roots to solve it, right? So when you have parents that have complex needs or have additional stressors and is really having a difficult time, I think, Valerie, you said that earlier, really looking at the approach that we're taking as behavior analysts. Are we just spraying the leaves and spraying the surface and only looking at what we can see? Or are we really getting down to the root issue? And that's the ACT-based approach. And I think that she said this on a call one day randomly, and I was like, I'm gonna remember that. But it really nicely summarizes why ACT and what ACT can do for our field. Lastly, I want to leave you some resources. Of course, ACBS, Association for Contextual Behavioral Science. I love this organization. This is one of my favorite professional development organizations within the ABA field, particularly because they are kind of a donation-based membership. You are able to sign up with how much you think the membership is worth for a year. They have so many resources, articles, podcasts, so many special interest groups within ACT. The ones I really like are their diversity, equity, and inclusion, and their climate change special interest groups that they have. So ACBS is really great for anything ACT and RFT, contextual behavioral science as well. Podcasts that talk about ACT and ACT and parent training. ACT in Context, the podcast, it's an old podcast, but I think it still has some good episodes. ACT Natural is a new podcast, not a new podcast, but it's out right now. And so they have a lot of different topics and guests on the show. The Do Better Pod by Dr. Megan Miller and Joe Smith. Myself, I was on the podcast talking about ACT and parent training and what this kind of really looks like and why it's important. And so looking up those 3 podcasts, if you have your podcast junkies out there. And social media, I really love the Mindful Behavior in Action social media Facebook page. They post all different types of things, webinars, podcasts. They have a nice file section as well. They do a lot of Facebook Lives. And really for those beginners and even intermediate and advanced ACT practitioners, that's a great social media page. And then also ACT Made Simple, acceptance and commitment therapy for practitioners. That's another one that I really, really love on Facebook. And I really try to limit my Facebook pages, but those 2 I check pretty regularly, just because I don't want to be on social media all the time. But Facebook is a really nice networking tool for behavior analysts if used correctly as well. So that is the end of my presentation, and I am ready for any questions and thoughts.
Perfect. That was awesome. Thanks, Adrienne. So we do have a few questions that did come in. So the most recent one was from Amanda, and it was about the last activity with that almost like a bullseye image. And she says, I feel like this one might come across as being a little bit judgmental if I'm not careful about it. Would you be able to share a little bit of role play with that activity?
Oh yeah, let me reshare my screen. And Amanda, if you feel comfortable to unmute yourself and show your camera, we can do a little bit of role play together, if that's okay.
I am in my workout clothes and have been cycling while you have been talking. I'm not comfortable with the camera portion, but I will unmute myself and be breathing heavily, but sure.
Okay.
I will role play with you.
Okay, awesome. So tell me a little bit of what you're kind of looking for in this role play. Like, how does this conversation go? Or more so to not be in a judgmental state of mind? Is that what you're kind of trying to get at?
I think I'm thinking about a specific family and client situation that I have, and a specific mom that I'm working with, and she feels judged by everyone. So I'm kind of looking at some of these tools going, we need to start to work on a variety of things where she's not wanting to change what she's doing, but she's not happy with where she's at.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of different issues with that specific parent. So yeah, I guess I'm just kind of like looking at this going, this is a great model. And you said that you really felt that this one was a good one, a better one than your other one to go through with parents. And I think that I'm looking at it going, ooh, that with this specific parent, probably not. But then I asked my question. And so I'm probably, now that I'm talking to you, I'm probably just going to use the other visual that you presented previously, the grid with the big bubble letters.
Our matrix.
Yeah.
So when you have parents that are kind of like, you know, in one breath, I'm feeling judged, I have a lot going on, I feel like I can't get myself out, and I feel like no one's here to help me. That's exactly what ACT, just in general, I think is just so great at. Because if you use this, and it's the ACT matrix, if you use the ACT matrix and you go back to her values, right? So if you did the 3 wishes exercise or any exercise to really pull out what her values are or their values, and connecting back to that, because you're not judging based off of anything negative, you're just moving them towards their values. And what do we need to engage in that makes you consistent with your values, right? And there might be muckiness in between, you know, and there might be people that are judging and she might feel judged, but that's what working through that. And really, I would probably look more into just to kind of go back, diffusion with her as well. I'm not an ACT consultant, but if she's kind of, if it's her actions are kind of blocking, or her thoughts are kind of blocking her from engaging in the action and not really moving forward, really looking at the diffusion aspect. And there are specific diffusion activities on there. If you join the Mindful Action Facebook page, they have a lot of diffusion activities that are discussed in the comments and things like that.
Oh, I'm in that group.
Okay, yeah. Does that help?
Yes. I'm kind of looking at you going between these 2 screens, and I'm kind of imagining sort of both this one with the away moves kind of overlaying on top of the bullet one, the other one, the bullseye, to like sort of say, okay, for relationships, for leisure skills, for each specific area, what is important and what are the things for the away moves and the forward moves and things like that for each specific section. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and you don't have to have these categories either. These are just the most common categories, right? So she doesn't have to do relationships or leisure. They're just most common.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for taking the time for my question.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you, Amanda, for speaking up. So we did have another question that came through. I feel like this is more psychology and counseling and not ABA. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, ACT is based off of ABA strategies. So previous years, ACT was definitely newer to the field, but ACT is based all off of relational frame theory, which is ABA. And really looking into, let me see if I have the book here. I do. Looking into the ACT, Stephen Hayes' book. Stephen Hayes is a BCBA, and he really kind of developed ACT and things like that. And so the ACBS website also has a lot of resources to connect ABA and ACT. It's contextual behavioral science, RFT, all ABA-based principles. I think the wording is very psychology-based. It's a lot, like I said, the wording for me is a lot more family friendly and parent-based friendly. So I think, does it use scientific wording and behavior analytic wording that we are used to? Not necessarily, but the foundations of ACT are all based out of ABA strategies. If that answers their question.
Yeah, I think so. If so that was a private message. So if that person would like to let me know if it did not answer your question, let me know.
Yeah.
Um, and then we did have a question that did come through that was also a private message. I have a family that I work with that the parents have conflicting values. The mom values compliance for the sake of safety, and the father values independence. Because of this, the parents will fight and disagree almost on a daily basis and also during my parent trainings. What would you do in this case? At what point would you need to bring in other supports, such as a marriage and family therapist, to support them working together?
Mhm. I would bring that in probably a little bit more sooner than later if we are the family marriage counselor, I mean, if we're at that point right now. And then I would do a values-based approach and see what is the, like, say the idea that you want with the marriage counselor, but really looking at and giving them a visual view of what's kind of been going on without necessarily talking. So if you have that bullseye or the 3 wishes exercise or just any exercise really, and say, Dad, this is what you value, Mom, this is what you value. How can we come in the middle and kind of make progress with our child? And if you bring everything back to the child, that may reduce some of that fighting and things like that. But I would probably bring in the marriage counselor or family counselor while you're overlapping doing some of this stuff, because they've been visually and overtly arguing during your parent trainings. And so sometimes having another support there can help take them out of that. And then also sometimes just kind of addressing the elephant in the room of, we want to make sure that we're making progress with Johnny, and I want to make sure you guys have all the supports and things that you need. And this approach can definitely help reduce any stressors. And so it's a nice way to addressing that elephant in the room of, like, you guys have conflicting values and you guys are arguing, and I can't make progress with your child until we all get on the same page.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we need that, right? We can't do everything on our own.
Right.
So we're coming up on time. So Kimberly just had maybe like a quick question before we close out. Do insurance companies accept ACT as a teaching format for parent trainings?
Yes, I've done it. I've put ACT as like the strategy that I've used and outlined for them. I recently had to do a treatment review with HAP. And I put ACT and ACT-based strategies into the parent training goal, and they loved it. They thought it was great, and they thought it was great that me as a behavior analyst, I was taking a different approach than what they've just commonly seen. And we've been rocking and rolling ever since.
Perfect. Love it. All right, then we are exactly on the hour. So if you do have any additional questions for Adrienne, please, you can send them to the DBA email and we can pass that along. I have also linked the sign out link in the chat. So please, if you are here for CEUs, please sign out, fill that out before 5 minutes from now. Okay, so Amanda, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your question and I'm going to pass that on to Adrienne because I want to be respectful of her time here. So other than that, please sign out. Please thank Adrienne for her time today. And yeah, it seems like everyone's saying thank you and they're learning a lot today. So thank you so much, Adrienne.
Thank you.
Yeah, and everyone else have a great weekend. Have a great day.
Bye, Selena.
Bye.